Go.
So we'll call the meeting to order on February 10th. This is our first 2021 meeting of the Community Action Advisory Board. So welcome everyone. It's nice to see you in the new year, even though it's still virtual. We have a large order of business today, including the election of our executive officers. As many of you know, we've had several resignations from our board, and we'll have several new members joining us today. So it'll be exciting to do introductions and meet everybody. So to start off with introductions, Rebecca, do you want to go through the list and we can each introduce ourselves?
Yes, we'll start at the very top that's me. I'm Rebecca Royce at Clark County Community Services. I am staff to the advisory board, and then I oversee contracts with the Homeless Crisis Response System, Anti-Poverty Initiative, and Affordable Housing Programs. Our next person is Treasurer Alicia Topper.
Thank you. So I'm Treasurer Alicia Topper. I serve as one of the elected positions for the board, and last year I was chair of the board, so I'm serving as chair today till we're finished with our elections.
Next on our list is Councillor Amy Beaujay.
Hello, my name is Amy Beaujay, and I am a council member from the town of Yakult.
Next on our list is Amy Brewer.
Hi, I'm still trying to figure out how to work this WebEx. I'm Amy Rourke. I'm now the community representative of District 1, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And what were we all supposed to say? Just introduce ourselves?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I think that's all. Thanks.
Next, we have Bridget McClellan. Bridget, do you want to introduce yourself? No. Bridget is a community representative for District 2. Next on our list is a new face to the advisory board, Dawn Lee. She is actually a program assistant in our unit. She has, we've been doing some staff changes to cover with all of the extra duties that have been going on. So Dawn is going to be helping me support the board in the role that Janet had previously held. Dawn, did you want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Dawn Lee, and I'm with the Community Services Department, and happy to be here.
Bridget, do you need me to unmute you? I don't know if she can hear me.
Is there a way to be able to see the people's faces instead of just the agenda on here?
You can change up in the upper right hand. I think it's in the upper right hand. It's different for viewers than it is for me. There should be a little icon that can change what the view looks like. Bridget, I see that you're unmuted now. Can you hear us? I don't believe so. We will continue down and hopefully she can get audio figured out. Our next board member is Jamie Spinelli.
Hello, I'm Jamie Spinelli. I work at CAAB and I am a low-income rep for, I think, District 1.
Our next board member is Karen Kameroff.
Hi, Karen Kameroff, low-income rep for, I believe, District 3. I forget all the time. And I am currently program coordinator for Pathways to Healing with the Cowlitz Tribes.
Thank you. Our next board member is Melanie Green.
Hello, I'm Melanie Green, and I'm the community member representative for District 3.
And then Michael Torres.
Good afternoon, everyone. Michael Torres, Clark County Community Services.
And last but not least, Rob Perkins.
Hi, I'm Rob Perkins. I'm, I guess, the elected representative from District 3. I serve on the
Yes.
Evergreen School Board.
Rob is a new board member for us this year. And so Rob, welcome. Usually our meetings are a little bit more organized, so I apologize. But we will have lots of information available today. And that is everyone.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for your patience while we went through introductions. And just as a reminder, when we're in the middle of the meeting, if everyone can ensure you're on mute, just to reduce the background noise, and then we'll unmute as each of us are able to contribute. There's also some chat functionality on the bottom. We're trying not to use chat if possible, since everything is subject to public disclosure. But if you really are having audio issues and that's the only way to communicate, I think Rebecca and myself can monitor that. And with that, we're going to move on to our next item of business, which is the election of executive officers. And due to the technicalness of virtual meetings and not everyone having the ability to do polls, we're going to go ahead and do a voice roll call for our voting today for each of the positions for our executive committee members. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn the floor over to Rebecca.
Thank you, Alicia. So we always take nominations from the floor. So if there's any board members that are interested in holding one of our executive positions, speak now. And then these are the board members that have mentioned that they'd be interested in holding the positions currently. Are there any nominations from the floor? Not hearing any. I think it would probably be best if we did each position independently, because we do have one that has two different stupid what's the phone number? So I think we heard Bridget for just a moment. And it sounds like she's going to try to call in so she can hear. For the chair, Alicia has offered to maintain the chair position for 2021, and hearing no other nominations, we could accept a nomination. Not a nomination. I forgot the terminology. I'm sorry. Alicia.
A motion.
A motion. Thank you. A motion from the floor to accept.
This is Melanie, and I make a motion to accept Alicia as chair.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Oh, okay.
Turn camera off. Second. Thank you. And then do you want to do a roll call, or do you think just everyone saying aye or nay would be sufficient in this situation, Alicia?
Yeah, I think with the single nominees, just a nay or yay, and so that would be sufficient.
Thank you. Alicia knows all of the rules backward and forward, so I will always defer to her. So if approved, say yay.
Yay?
Yay.
Okay.
Is it working?
Hey.
So we can hear you, Bridget.
Yes, it is. It's working.
I can't hear anybody, just in case you're wondering.
Did you try calling in? Oh, she can't hear.
So I'm gonna try and phone in.
Okay. Are there any nays for the nomination of Alicia to the chair position? Not hearing any, we'll take that motion as approved. We have two individuals that are interested in the vice chair position. We have both David Poland and Karen Kameroff. David apologized for not being able to attend this afternoon for the meeting, but he is interested. Because we have two nominees, we will do a roll call once we have a motion on the floor. Right, that's the way to do it, right, Alicia?
Yeah, typically we would do these types of votes via ballot, but because we're not able to do ballots, we're going to do a voice roll call. So what we should do is I'll make the motion for each individual, and then we'll take a vote. And so vote for the person that you prefer for vice chair. And that's how we'll handle this. So I'll start by saying I now make a motion for both individuals. We'll take individual votes for each of our candidates. So to start,
Could I just interrupt and apologize? I just called in because my audio doesn't seem to be working. So if you could start that sentence again. Alicia, I just got lost.
Certainly, no worries. We're currently going to take a voice vote and roll call for our vice chair positions. We have 2 candidates interested in serving in that capacity. So I'm going to make a motion for each individual. Of course, they will need a second to move forward, and we'll vote on them individually. And the candidate that has the most yes votes will be our new vice chair. So to start, I will make a motion for David Poland. Is there a second?
I'll second. Rob Perkins.
So we have a motion and a second. So all those in favor by roll call, Rebecca?
Yes. We'll
And I'll
start.
be the tiebreaker, so I can go last if there's a tie.
Thank you very much. Amy Boucher, do you approve David Poland for vice chair position?
Firm.
And Alicia, should they be saying who they want to nominate or who they?
No, we'll just do a yes, no vote, and then we'll move to Karen, and the person that has the most yes votes will be the person that succeeds to the position.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the clarification. So Amy voted in the affirm for David. Amy Rourke?
Yes.
Yes. Bridget?
No.
Jamie?
Yes.
Linda Glover?
Yes.
Melanie Green?
No.
Rob Perkins?
Yes.
Okay, so that's everyone who has a vote. Rebecca?
Should I ask Karen? She's also,
Yes.
Okay, Karen?
Am I supposed to vote?
Yes.
Well, that's confusing. David is for you. David.
Are you withdrawing your candidacy, Karen?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so Karen has decided to withdraw from the position, and I would encourage you to come forward again next year. I love seeing people step forward for executive committee meetings and leadership roles. So with that, we have 6 yeses for David, and with no opponent, he will serve as our next vice chair.
All right.
Great.
On to secretary. So is there a motion for Bridget?
I'll move to nominate Bridget.
So we have a motion from Rob. Is there a second?
I second. This is Melanie.
Second from Melanie. Okay, we'll go ahead and all those in favor say yay.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Hearing no opposition, Bridget, congratulations on being secretary for 2021. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for those that put yourself forward to serve in that capacity. We truly appreciate it. So the next board business, and these are action items, we need to approve our November 2020 minutes. These were provided to you via email. Do I have
Move to approve?
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Do you want to give us a quick overview of the adoption of the 2021 work plan, Rebecca?
Yes, I'm gonna pause this just for a second. I'm gonna switch over to the actual work plan. Hopefully you saw this in the email that we sent out with the minutes and the reminder for the email. Most of the agenda is going to look very similar, or the work plan will look very similar to last year, where our ongoing efforts are the same. Our focus for 2021 is going to be to increase board-driven advocacy efforts. And I think actually just even the last couple of weeks, we've done significantly more than what we've done in the first part of the year in previous history. So congratulations and thank you for everyone to do that. We've also need to complete and adopt the community needs assessment this year. And then we want to make sure that the board has increased knowledge of the funded programs and their outcomes. And part of the presentation today will hopefully increase that portion. We have our typical, this would typically be our January meeting. And these are all the things that are on our agenda today. And then looking at future months, March, we will have the director updates since Vanessa was not available for this meeting, along with reports and having our regular updates for legislation, the City of Vancouver's efforts, and then task forces. We also had talked previously about doing presentations for the board. It's been difficult because of the online format that we've been doing for the meetings. I've left those on here, so as soon as we can go back to in-person meetings, we will start having those actual presentations. Or if there's not much on the agenda and there would be time to have an agency come in and do a presentation, then we can make sure that that's scheduled for that. In May, that's Community Action Month. That's also when we need to adopt the Community Needs Assessment. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. In July, we'll talk about the review of the point in time count that did look different this year because of the pandemic, but we'll make sure to have a presentation from Dale regarding that information. We hope to get back into the swing of things of doing a report to the community. We used to do this every year, and it was nice to kind of show the community what all hard work our programs have done. We've, during a lot of transitions, had fallen off being able to do that. Some of the board members that have been around for a while probably remember that report, and we would like to get back into making sure that's done for the community. And then in November, we'll have just a regular updates and things like that. We will be getting close to doing the request for application. It might even be open at that point. I can't remember the timeline off the top of my head, but we'll start planning trainings and information regarding the request for application for board members, and training is very possible to happen in November. Just as a reminder, this is a living document. We update it and change it as we need to fit what the needs of the board are. But it definitely gives us a roadmap for what the meetings will look like throughout the year.
Thank you, Rebecca. Are there any questions from members of the board?
Yeah, this is Amy. Can I get the hard copy, like print it out?
Yes. And my understanding, Amy, is that you prefer to have a hard copy of all of the documents from the meeting. So yeah. Dawn, if you would mind making a note that we'll print all of that out, and that we'll send those to your new address, correct?
Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Amy. Are there any other comments or questions before we take action? Okay, hearing none, would you bounce back over to the agenda, Rebecca? Okay, so we're going to adopt the 2020 work plan as presented. I didn't hear any amendments. So is there a motion for adoption?
This is Melanie. I make a motion to adopt the 2021 work plan.
This is Karen. I second.
So there's a motion and second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, work plan is adopted.
Phew. Just kidding. That's the easy one.
Okay, board business and info items are bylaws. Yay. So the bylaws really came to the forefront at the end of last year when we had a little bit of a issue with our appointments and the timing of our board position. So Rebecca, do you want to give us a little bit of background on what may need to be changed or what process we need to go through?
Yeah, I have actually been thinking for the last few months that it was time to take a look at the bylaws. The last time they were adopted was May of 2018. And we recommend doing it every few years just to make sure that everything is current in our bylaws. There was a new interpretation of how our reappointment process works by our new interim county manager, which kind of put us in flummox as far as how we would reappoint the current board members that were at the end of their term. So we want to make sure that we do get a group together that will review the bylaws and take a look at the wording that's in the bylaws to make sure that it's tightened up and it's a process that everyone agrees on. There's also been I've been kind of looking through the bylaws and seeing that there's some things that might be a little too flexible in some areas where they could be a little bit more flexible and meet the needs of the board. And so I believe we have, not sure if it's later in the agenda, but a request to have a small committee of the board to look at the bylaws, looking at maybe 3 or 4 board members that would be interested in reviewing the bylaws and putting forth recommendations for the full board to consider.
Perfect. So if that's in another part of the agenda, then we can see if there's anyone interested in making those edits and then bringing them back to the full board. And I apologize while I'm unmuted. I have work going on in my house, so there may be some really strange background noises. I apologize for that. So moving on from bylaws, since we'll discuss that briefly in a minute, conflict of interest policy and board member responsibilities.
Yes, so for those of you that have been around for a while, you probably remember getting the forms at the January meeting and us asking you to sign them. We did it through DocuSign this year, and you guys were fantastic, and you all signed them and returned them very quickly. So I wanted to kind of check in with the board and see how you liked that process, and maybe that would be the way we kind of do it moving forward. There's no reason to have a hard copy of the documents, so electronic versions are allowable. Is that something the board would like us to continue doing?
I'd agree.
I would agree. I think less paper, the better.
I also agree.
Works for me.
That's great. Okay, we'll do that for in the future to get it all done. And so we'll do that through DocuSign going in the future. So I just want to thank you all for getting them all done, and we have them all filed. Our 2021 board member roster is under construction as we are trying to fill positions. So I will get it to you as soon as it's a little bit more complete. At this time, we do have Rob Perkins as our new board member representing the elected officials in District 3. Alicia Topper is now representing District 2 in her position. We have 2, almost 3 vacant positions. We have 2 positions in District 4, the community rep position and the low income rep position that are open. We have received 3 applications for the community rep for District 4, and I was just waiting for this meeting to have our executive team to put together, and I will be sending you those applications for review. And then we'll move forward with filling the community rep position for District 4. And then you probably hopefully saw just recently that Tom Breitenbach has resigned from the board. There are very few reasons that you are not allowed to be on the board, and one of them is if you are an employee of the Department of Community Services. And Tom has taken on and accepted a position with our department as a project program coordinator. And so therefore he is ineligible to be on the board. He put his resignation as of this Friday, and then we will re-advertise for both the low-income reps for District 3, which is Tom's position, and District 4, that is the one that we have not received applications for. So we will keep trying to get those positions filled. So we'll keep moving forward with those.
Which district is Tom again?
Tom was the low-income representative from District 3.
Great.
Yes. And then I will get that to you as soon as it's a little bit more firm, even once we have the community rep position from District 4 filled, then I'll make sure I get that to you.
Okay.
Alicia, you're okay with me moving forward with the report?
Yep, you go, girl.
Fantastic. I'm going to switch my screen again to one of these. So typically we try to regularly give you updates and quarterly reports on the outcomes of our programs, and with a lot of the stuff that had been going on, we haven't gotten you the fiscal year end report last year. Let me make this a little bit bigger. And we'll make sure to email this out. I just finished this one last night, and I just finished the first quarter this morning or this afternoon before our meeting. So it's been a little bit busy. I was hoping it would go kind of in between that size, but it's a little bit funky. There we go. So this is going to be the quarterly report for all the programs that are funded through our normal RFA process, that have contracts that did services between July 1st, 2019 and June 30th of 2020. So when looking at the participant satisfaction, we were at 81%, which is right in where we've been in previous quarters. And we had, some clients that were mentioning that they had concerns about the ease of enrolling, especially this final quarter was right in the beginning of the pandemic. So there was a lot of concerns going on around then. We maintained a 12.3% response rate, which is right around where we've been for the last several quarters for that. So it seems like the satisfaction rate for the full fiscal year was staying pretty consistent. When looking at what's being funded, this is the same information. It just lists out all of the programs that are being funded under community action and our homeless crisis response system. For our community action programs, this chart is for the full year of what was spent by the programs. And you can see most of them are right at 100% or very near 100%. Clark College, if you remember, was one that got a significantly late start on their program. And we worked with the programs to either determine if they would be able to spend those funds in the next fiscal year, or we recaptured the funds. And with Clark College, they gave us a be able to spend. So we anticipate that they will spend not only their annual allocation, but the remaining funds from the first fiscal year. And then when looking at the homeless crisis response system, again, you'll see a lot of them were up 90–100% of spending. There were a few that were not, that did not spend out. Packed with their permanent supportive housing program, they were having a hard time. Some of their funds are very specific to serve chronically homeless families, and they were struggling a little bit with that. Those funds are actually being reallocated now to SHARE's permanent supportive housing program, and they are increasing the number of households that they can take in so that those funds will get spent. Lifeline and their permanent supportive housing program were brand new, and it took them a little time to get the program up and running, which is why they are behind in spending. And Beth is working with them on a plan to get those funds spent or take those funds back and reallocate them into a different program. CMAR continues to struggle with being able to get us the invoicing, complete and accurate invoicing. And so there and some technical assistance work that we've been continuing to do throughout the year to try to get them to be able to get for the services that they've provided. Are there any questions about the expenditures so far for the fiscal year that ended in June? I know it's a long time ago, I know.
So you emailed a copy of this, right, Rebecca?
I will. I just finished
Okay.
it, so it will come out in the follow-up email. So you'll get to
Okay.
like digest
No,
it.
I thought I might have missed it, so thank you for that.
So looking at the community action programs and the performance that they did in a couple of areas where their total persons served. So health and social behavioral health category, that includes our food services. And we know that the beginning of the pandemic and really going through has been a significant demand on the Clark County Food Bank and the pantries, along with Share's Hot Meals program. So you can see that they blew their original outcomes out of the water with the number of people that they served. The support services category includes 211 info. They also had a significant increase in demand for calls into their system because of the pandemic. And then employment is our Partners in Careers program. And once the pandemic started, they had to halt services and then reimagine what that would look like. And so it took them a while to kind of figure out how that would best work and the marketing around that. So you'll see that they're quite a bit lower. To kind of call out a few of the programs like we have been doing, the Clark County Food Banks, the Fresh Alliance program, they distributed over 1.4 million pounds, which is 6.5 blue whales worth of food that went out into our community over the year. Volunteer Lawyers program helped 216 households avoid eviction, and that's with their eviction program where they actually help people with the paperwork and documentation, and sometimes their lawyers will volunteer lawyers will actually attend the proceedings with them. So that's a significant number of households that did not fall into the homeless crisis response system because of the work that the volunteer lawyers program did. They also helped 17 people improve their credit scores, and 388 people indicated that they had completely resolved their legal issues due to the help that volunteer lawyers program provided to them. The Hunger Response Program provided almost 56,000 meals to 622 individuals just at the Share House through the Hot Meals program. And they also provided 2,300 food packs each week until the pandemic hit, and then the services altered a little bit, but 2,300 students were able to receive food for the weekend. And the Partners in Careers program did provide 76 workshops through their program. They helped 4 youth obtain employment and 49 adults get a job while they were able to fully implement their program. When looking at the homeless crisis response system programs, our core programs, which are Rentwell, the Housing Solutions Center, and the SOAR program, served 2,296 individuals and households. And because of the pandemic and the significant demand for rent assistance, the Housing Solutions Center saw quite a few more calls than they had projected when we originally started the contracts. The rest of them are fairly on target. The targeted prevention program, that is where people were calling in. The Housing Solutions Center received a significant amount of county relief funds from the county's allocation of CARES Act funds to help with prevention assistance. So you can see 300% above of their contract goal is due because of that additional funding that they received. And then shelter and other programs also received some of those funds to increase the amount of services they were able to provide, including shelters had to reduce capacity at the beginning with the pandemic, but the county funds and other funding came in and increased the number of motel vouchers to try to offset that capacity issue. And they were able to serve quite a few households and put them into hotels.
Does that include any money for the motel that was operated?
So that the numbers for the number of individuals served is not included in this because it's not run through our traditional shelter programs.
Okay.
And then one of the other outcomes that we try to keep an eye on are, households maintaining or increasing income, because we, to be self-sufficient and move out of the programs, they need to, maintain or increase their income. And so these are the results for all the different housing programs there. For the most part, they're right in that around that 100% mark, which is actually pretty good considering the last quarter is when the pandemic hit and a lot of layoffs occurred. And then just a quick look at the demographics. Just as a reminder, this is not going to be everyone that is served in our system because not everyone is provides all of the different demographic information. But age is usually a pretty common one that we get, and gender. So you'll see most of the responses there. But this just gives you an idea of what the demographics look like for the fiscal year that was served. And that is the end of the fiscal year. So that is for all 4 months starting July 1, 2019 through June 30, 2020. And again, we'll get this out to you so you can actually see the numbers. I know it's very difficult to see on your screen right now. To get us caught up, I wanted to make sure that I also got you the first quarter of the second fiscal year of our contract period, which is July 1, 2020 through September 30th, 2020. One of the things you'll notice is that overall customer satisfaction did drop by about 10 percentage points. And the response rate dropped significantly from usually around 12 to 13% down to under 5%. We're not surprised by this. Programs were trying to figure out different ways of engaging their clients in a remote world. When they come in for case management, it's a lot easier to say, here, fill this satisfaction survey out. In a remote environment, it's a lot harder. Some of the programs have been able to figure it out really quickly and have been getting some decent response rates. And so we anticipate that those numbers will go back up to the previous response rate that we've had before. And then we know there's a lot of frustration in the community right now about access to services. There's just not enough resources and the significant demand for all types of assistance that we provide in the community, from employment supports for people that are getting laid off or need to be retrained out of working in restaurants, to the food assistance that obviously is in demand, and rent assistance. So seeing that people are a little bit more frustrated and times, it's understandable.
Could I ask, I want a point of clarification.
Yes.
This is Linda. What did you say the response rate typically is?
For all of last year, it was 12.3%, but it hovered in that between 12 and 13% for the response rate.
So this chart is based on 13% of the people responding, typically. Okay. What kind of efforts are being made to increase that percentage?
So several of the programs have started partnering with different programs that provide text survey types so that people can text that response in. And so those are starting to see increase the response rate.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. So again, this talks about what we fund through the RFAs, and then we'll go into the expenditure. So our program should be around 25% spent for the first quarter of the fiscal year. And here you can see that most of them are, except for our hunger response program. And just as a reminder, they have, we only fund a very small component of the program. So they bill us first and spend that before they start using their private donations and other funding that they collect. They build significantly for that. And the significant increase in demand in the hot meals program has increased the cost for that program. And then looking at the homeless crisis responses, you know, people are right in that 20 to 30%, which is where we would expect them to be. Lincoln Place received, and the Prevention Through Diversion program, which I had mentioned before, had received CARES Act funding through the county to help with their service. Makes it look like, and that funding all had to be spent by November. So it makes it look like they've spent a lot of their contract, you know, disproportionately for the year. You'll see that that actually starts evening out when we get more into the second and third quarters of the report. It'll look a little bit more like it should. And then when we look at the performance of the community action programs, again, I can't stress it enough that the food bank has been doing phenomenal work in the community and providing it to so many households. They actually have served more people in this first quarter than they had projected to serve for the entire. And it's not slowing down. So their numbers will be completely skewed off the charts this year until the pandemic is under control. I do also want to make another note on in that category. It actually normally would be even larger, but the hot meals program, under guidance from the federal department, and now I can't think of what their name is, where they receive some of the donated food for that program, had recommended that they not ask so many questions before and present so many barriers to people accessing the hot meals program. So they are no longer able to unduplicate the number of people that they are seeing within any time period. They are still documenting how many meals that they are providing, just not the actual unduplicated number of people. So that number will no longer be included in the chart. Typically, they've served 2,500 people a year through the hot meals program, many of them coming back, you know, every day for services. And then looking at that, so the Fresh Alliance program had distributed over 400,000 pounds of food in that first quarter. I thought I would switch it up, and we will talk about it in the weight of the space shuttle. This is the space shuttle without any gas in it. It's completely empty. Once it has gas, it's like 1.6 million pounds or something like that. But now it's like 160,000 pounds with it just being a space shuttle. And so that comes out to about 2.5 space shuttles. The volunteer lawyers program and many of our other programs, you know, have seen, you know, changes in the services that they're providing and stuff like that, you know, in the levels of services that they've been providing. The volunteer lawyers program did help 32 households in that first quarter avoid eviction, and just in the first quarter served or helped 17 households improve their credit scores. If you remember from a few minutes ago, they had 17 for the entire year, fiscal year. They were able to do that in the first quarter of this year. And then they've already helped 124 people resolve their legal issues. They've been really working hard. A lot of that has to do with the eviction moratorium and employment law. And they had hired an actual employment specialist with the COVID funding that this board had provided to them. And so they've been doing some really great work with the employment law. The hunger response program, I mentioned, I can't give you unduplicated people, but I can still tell you how many meals have been provided. And in the first quarter, they provided over 25,000 meals. And then I wanted to kind of highlight Janus Youth's Oak Bridge. Oh, I have a typo in there. The Oak Bridge Youth Shelter Program, where they've already helped 14 youth go back. I know I hate finding typos. I'm sorry.
Especially when it's my name.
I was thinking about you, Bridget.
Yeah, right.
But they've already helped 14 youth find safe and stable housing. Now that could be going back to their housing where there was mediation done. It could be to help them get emancipated and move out on their own. There's a lot of fluctuation or flexibility in what that means. The core of it is that the youth are in safe and stable housing. They're not on the streets. They're not in shelter. They are in permanent stable housing. And then looking at the homeless crisis response system, the core systems program, again, that's going to be the Housing Solution Center that's skyrocketing those numbers. And that's a lot to do with the additional rent assistance available in the community there. So that's why that number is so significantly high. And then when our housing programs have households that are still in the program from the previous fiscal year, they're counted again in that first quarter. And so that's why you see that the permanent supportive housing and the rapid housing programs are already significantly through the outcomes that they proposed. And then we'll see that there's only going to be a few households added every quarter throughout the rest of the fiscal year. And then again, looking at their income and making sure that they are maintaining, oh no, that's right. I'm going to check this chart to make sure that I put the right one in, because it should be the increased income chart. You can see that a lot of the households in targeted prevention, in permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing have been able to maintain or increase their income. The case managers have been working significantly with them. And part of that has to do with the additional unemployment and the supplemental unemployment that a lot of households are receiving if they were laid off during the pandemic. And then just a quick look at the demographics. And again, you can look at these a little bit closer once you have the report right in front of you, but just to give you an idea of the demographics of those that we're serving this first quarter. Any questions on that report? Okay, I'll check those two things and I'll make sure that these get out to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's always nice to see the progress that our community partners are making and the impact they're having. So let's see, we've got, bylaw review subcommittee. Back to this topic. Okay, we'll get some action here. We already had the brief background on why we need to have a bylaw review. So this would be a time where members of the board can volunteer to serve as that first editing committee, bring back suggestions, edits to the full board for consideration. I want to volunteer to serve. So would there be any other members that would like to join me in reviewing our bylaws?
This is Jamie. I would like to.
Thank you, Jane.
I have an interest. What kind of time commitment are you expecting?
Well, I believe our meetings would be virtual. Likely, we would do some time reviewing them on our own and just thinking about how we operate as a board, and you come back with suggestions. So I'm thinking 2 meetings. We probably can get it done.
Okay, I have an interest.
Okay, so Rob, Jamie, Karen, do you have any interest? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, great. So maybe it'll be the 4 of us, unless there's anyone else with a burning desire.
And as I mentioned before, I had already kind of gone through and I started posing questions, not to try to influence the board, but just areas where we might want to think about it. And then making sure that where we look at the reemployment process, if we do change what that process looks like, it will look different for David or our at-large members. That looks different. So I made sure I put notes in there regarding that. And then I'll reach out to everyone to schedule a date. And then I'm hoping that we would be able to get this done. I was going to say at the March meeting, but that's only a couple of weeks away. So maybe we can have a full recommendation for the May meeting.
Perfect. So it'll be Rob, me, Karen, and Jamie.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, we're getting close to legislative updates. I know there's a lot going on, but before that, we'll do a quick strategic plan update. So Rebecca.
I'm actually going to be able to stop talking for 5 minutes and let Michael take over from here.
Yes, and I actually think that even though there is a lot going on, I'm not going to cover most of that in these updates. You should have received an email from Rebecca with some pretty detailed updates on legislation on both the federal side and the state side, and I will talk a little bit about that. But really, the bulk of the information, the richest part of it, you're not going to get from me here. Is going to be like, look at the email. I'll kind of point you in some things to look out for when you go through that. But it should be pretty informative. In terms of strategic plan update, and we don't have slides for this. I'm just going to basically tell you where you're at. Usually at this meeting, Vanessa comes in and gives you a 2 to 5 minute update of where the department, not the Community Action Agency, but the Department of Community Services is at with its strategic plan and where we are going. So just as some review.
And Michael, for those members that are new, can you tell us who Vanessa is?
Thank you for saying that. So Vanessa Gaston is the Director of Community Services. And if you look back at your onboarding into the board, the CAAB board, the Department of Community Services of Clark County acts as the community action agency for this region, for this county. This department receives the community services block grant funds that require us to establish a CAAB board, the Community Action Advisory Board, to oversee these funds in an advisory capacity to the council. So Vanessa is the director of this department. And in that sense, she kind of has a dual-hatted role, because outside of all the activities around community action, she's involved in everything and provides guidance to everything the whole department does, which deals with behavioral health, housing and homeless, programs that address poverty and help people help people who are low income achieve some stability, veteran services, infrastructure, affordable housing, homelessness. I mean, it really covers a lot of areas that deal with a whole range of state and federal and local funds well beyond the community services block grant. So going back to also, for everyone to refresh your memory, Clark County Community Services established a strategic plan in the fall of 2017. And the last time Vanessa came and spoke to you about that plan, some of the things that she touched on that plan covers, it put the department in a direction where we have been focusing on moving all programs to be more outcome focused, using data to drive decision making, using an equity lens to ensure barriers are removed for the diverse communities that we serve, developing key strategic partnerships with providers to improve services, and helping providers become more coordinated and integrated to improve system delivery. Those are the things Vanessa told you about last year. And even in some of the presentation, the quarterly reports that Rebecca just went over, you can see some of the, that focus reflected in being more outcome focused, knowing, having goals in all our contracts and in all the reporting that the service providers give us in terms of how many people you expect to serve, what are the service delivery goals and targets that you're planning to do. Using data to drive decision making. I think in some of the next slides that you're going to be seeing from Rebecca regarding the expenditures and finances of the department, there's a lot that we've been doing in terms of things like funding HMIS. If you go, for those of you that have been here for a while as board members and you see the program presentations, and last year we directed you to the Council for the Homeless webpage that showed the system dashboard for homelessness. Some of that a lot of that actually was done with our input and requests of what we need to see, and with our funding for HMIS and to support their putting the data online and viewable for everyone in the community. So those are things that have been focus areas for the department, and that has not changed throughout the pandemic. And the specific service area focuses that we've had have been on housing stability, economic development, general community well-being, and a resilient community. So those are within the department, the focus areas of service. What do we want the services we fund to support? And you certainly see that in terms of, especially in over the past year and a half with the pandemic, housing stability, economic development, and well-being. And I think you're going to be seeing it in the next several slides, where funding has been funneled into in terms of community needs. It has been a lot in terms of housing stability, quite a bit in economic development. I'm going to talk about that just a little bit, because economic development is not something that the CAAB board touches on directly as much. A lot of those dollars are from community development block grant and small business assistance. But over the past year, through contracts with Mercy Corps Northwest, Fourth Plane Forward, we funded grants and small loans for over 221 businesses that were economically impacted by COVID, using CARES Act dollars and community development block grant dollars. So, those, we've been pretty true to those focus areas over, even though 2020 was a very abnormal year for us programmatically, and you will see that in the next couple of slides as well when we go over resources. The strategic plan has served as a really good guide, and we've, helping us stay true to it and focus our activities. I also expect we will probably be updating this strategic plan. It has been a living document, but we will be moving it to a reiteration for the next 3 to 5 years, probably starting this fall, the fall of 2021. And based on the last strategic plan process with staff, it took us about a year to really hash out the current strategic plan. So I would expect that from fall 2021 towards the end of 2022, that will be one of the activities that all the staff in community services are going to be working on. The last thing I'll talk about in terms of where are we at with the strategic plan is we've done data a lot, we've done outcomes and tracking, but an area where we really have focused pretty intensely over the past 2 years has been equity. And the department has established an internal equity team and invested quite a bit of staff time and any resource that we have for training of the equity team. We have adopted a department equity statement. We have incorporated the equity statement, just like our mission, vision, values. I'm talking department mission, vision, values, into all our contracts. All our contracts, even community action contracts with our service providers, do speak to equity and some specific actions we want to see those service providers take around equity, which include things like demonstrating actions so that policies are culturally competent for the people that they're serving, tracking data so that you can see disproportionality in terms of service delivery, who needs the service and who's receiving the services, and also disproportionality in the outcomes of the services. For example, people who need rental assistance or people who are housing unstable, like we look at it through an equity lens and be able to see the demographic information and verify that people that in the community we know need the assistance. Are they getting the assistance? Are they making it through the different screenings? Or are they being somehow screened out? And if they receive rental assistance, are we seeing any differences in the success once that assistance stops with people being able to remain housing unstable? That's one of the things that the focus, again, working with the Council for the Homeless. The Council for Homeless now puts out an annual equity report that looks at systemically at all the programs that really we fund, like the county funds, that actually mostly fall under the community action agency in terms of the homeless crisis response system, and looks at what those outcomes are through an equity lens, and it looks for disproportionality and identifies it. And you can actually access the 2018, 2019 reports on their website right now to look at them. And we do look at them, and they inform future contracts and things we put into future contracts with our service providers. So that's really the strategic plan update. I think Vanessa, when she talks to you at the next meeting to give her director update, you may hear a couple similar things that I just mentioned, but does anyone have any questions on that?
What was the outcomes that you saw from the 2018-19?
Well, we did have some changes between 2018 and 2019, and it'll be interesting to see what we see in 2020. And that might be a little bit different as well with its own dynamics because of the pandemic happening. What we saw in 2018 was a affirmation, a confirmation that communities of color and historically marginalized communities were more likely to need housing assistance. And the reason I'm talking about housing assistance is because the equity report from the Council for the Homeless specifically talks about the homeless crisis response system. So they were more likely to be homeless. They were BIPOC communities, historically marginalized communities, people of color were less likely to receive the services. So we did see in this community disproportionality along those lines. That depending on the intervention that was used, whether we're talking rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing, the outcomes varied. Their disproportionality in outcomes varied a little bit, with permanent supportive housing having very similar outcomes for people of color. And in rapid rehousing programs, white people having slightly better outcomes than people of color. So tracking that data, making the reports, and being aware of the disproportionalities is incredibly important to us, so that we can, when we see it, we can address it and start really trying to learn how to improve on it. And, you know, to give you an example of, and what we saw in 2019 was a slight improvement in all of those factors, because, and I think one of the reasons for that improvement is that we were looking for it, right? And we were working with our service providers to look for it. And we had already put into contracts things like, you know, having your staff look like the population it serves to as much as possible, having policies, you know, like looking for disproportionalities. And if you see them, look at your policies and see if it's having an unintended impact in terms of who you're screening into the program, who's receiving assistance, and what those outcomes are. Having the boards also have you know, the organizational boards have either diverse representation that includes BIPOC communities, and leverage advisory boards that are culturally specific, and you know, it includes advocacy for local groups. Those are examples of things that we actually have in our contracts now. So we did see some slight improvement with 2019, and then with 2020, that equity report is not out yet. We did quite a few efforts around equity programmatically specific with the state eviction rental assistance, emergency rental assistance program, ERAP, where we contracted with 10 what we call buy-in-for organizations, which are led by BIPOC communities, you know, like, and they specifically serve those same communities. So organizations like Odyssey, the Noble Foundation, Cascade AIDS Project, which was organization, Rebecca, the name that served the Micronesian community. I mean, you know, with very, very focused organizations that had a cultural lens. So we contracted with fee for service for outreach and referral to the ERAP program with 10 different BIPOC organizations. Did a lot of tracking of demographic data with all the service providers that gave that assistance. And when we were done with the funding, over 1,700 households received rental assistance, over 5,000 months of rental assistance between August 24th and December 30th of last year. Just over 50% of the households that received assistance had identified as being a BIPOC-headed household, and over 74% were headed by single woman, a single parent, mostly woman, and I guess that would just be like the highlight. There's, you know, we broke it down by demographic data and stuff like that. But that's was a success in the sense that we have not achieved that level of contact with these historically marginalized communities successfully before the ERAP program. And we certainly hope to continue that and replicate that as much as we can.
Thank you. Did that answer your question, Karen?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Great. And Michael, could you just add, when we send the updated reports, can we have the link to where that strategic plan lives so members
Absolutely.
of the board at their leisure can take a look at it?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the legislative update unless there are other questions about the strategic plan. Okay, legislation. Michael.
So on the legislation side, I'm mostly going to point you to the email that Rebecca sent because it has all the information. It's broken in two parts. The body of the email really is from the NCAF, National Community Action Foundation, and really focuses on the federal side. That information is updated through January 15th. It's still pretty current. I mean, it still is current, and it reflects the efforts that are happening in DC right now, and I think that are going to be shaping the legislative focus over the next year, which will really deal with the American Rescue Plan, which includes efforts like raising the minimum wage, $5 billion for light, heat, and water assistance, extension of eviction and foreclosure moratoriums and forbearance of federally guaranteed loans through at least September 30th of 2021, providing an additional $25 billion for rental assistance, providing an additional $20 billion for a national food program, $130 billion to K-12 schools to safely reopen, like within, as soon as possible. So that's the focus of the American Rescue Plan, and that is what you are. A lot of the content that you are seeing the House and the Senate trying to include in the budget reconciliation right now. But I think that whatever does not get included is going to be falling into the ongoing legislative agenda of this administration. And almost all of it in one way or the other touches community action. So on the state, and I think that's a pretty good summary in terms of like the federal side legislation, but you can read it in detail in the email we sent. On the state side, about 2 years ago, for those of you that followed state legislation a lot, you may recall there was a big focus on housing, homelessness, funds that address things like affordable housing. This year, there is a fairly similar emphasis, but on behavioral health as opposed to homelessness and housing. A lot of specific legislation and language is really going to be touching on behavioral health, which impacts a lot of our community action programs, and a lot of our service providers and systems touch on those things, but they don't really directly fall into the programs that we fund. So in some ways, you may get a lot of specific alerts, but you're probably not going to get as much for the advocacy committee to really focus in terms of this is the direction where the whole legislation focus is. Outside of behavioral health, you are going to see a lot of COVID-19 relief programs, and the state implementation of the $2.2 billion of federal funds that are coming to the state for COVID relief. In the attachment on the state side of the email I sent, I think you should look at the session cutoff calendar that is included in there, because if you're on an advocacy committee and you're interested in specific bills, which are also listed in that note, you can see all the cutoff, all the dates that are important to cutoff of legislation that's moving forward. So the session ends April 25th, but we have 5 cutoff dates between February 22nd and April 11th that will be kind of like gates through which any legislation that's specific that you are interested in seeing passed for it to make it through. And I don't, there isn't really a lot more that I'd really point you. The state legislation information that we sent you in the email, it's very detailed. It's from the county lobbyist report, and I'll continue to forward those to the CAAB as we receive them. And we receive them every couple of weeks. So,
Michael, do you want to touch quickly on one that will significantly could impact the board regarding the document recording fee increase?
Yeah, I guess. You know, we don't have a whole lot of information on it yet. Even though it is moving forward. The Washington Low Income Housing Alliance has worked with several legislators at the state level to do a $100 increase to document recording fees. And those are fees that are collected with real estate during real estate transactions locally. All those funds, like the way document recording fees, this is the reason I hadn't really started it. They hadn't really originally talked about it because it really will get into the weeds quickly. But currently, document recording fees funds, it generates about $7 million of revenue locally that goes into our homeless crisis response system. This legislation would not take away any of that. It will increase document recording fees collected by about $100 per transaction. It is very dependent on the housing market. So when the housing market's booming, all of this revenue is booming. When the housing market is not, this revenue drops. So again, it can drop significantly. This additional fee, though, does not stay here locally. It will entirely go to the state, and the state will basically redistribute it back to the counties in the form of rental assistance programs such as ERAP. It's designed, and these fees will be permanent. They will not have any sunset. So the feedback we have given the state and the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance, and that I believe they have incorporated into proposed legislation, is that any fees that leave Clark County, we do want those, it to come back to Clark County, in whatever, program it is. We don't want to fund other counties with their rental assistance, because our need is pretty severe.
Michael, what's that bill number? Do you know?
I don't remember off the top of my head. It is included in that list.
Okay, I'll find it, because the county is collecting that revenue, depositing it into our account, and then they want us to send it to the state so the state can turn around and send it back to us. We could just put it into a restricted fund once we collect it. That seems.
Isn't that what happens now, though, with the REIT fund?
Real estate excise tax. No, we retain a portion of REIT and we remit a large portion of it back to the state. Some funds, like all of our sales tax goes directly to the state, and then they remit that back to us.
Yeah.
I'll read the bill. I'm just curious from the financial side of it.
Yeah, my understanding on the financial side is that it will all go to the state. I don't know if it will be going directly to the state or it's collected here locally, right? As part of the document recording fee. So yes, they will probably be asking for us to send it to them, so then it gets put into a program and then come back here. So, and I will, if you don't see it, let me know, and I'll get the number and I'll send it to Alicia. So, but that's the major housing related bill. There's also a lot of smaller legislation in terms of making some changes to our local well, those are not even legislative. Those are regulatory. Those are guidelines. So never mind. Things that actually have a very positive equity focus. That asking counties to commit a percentage of funds in their service programs towards specific equity goals. So, and we support that. Questions with legislative?
Additional questions from the board?
I have a question. Turn on my camera.
Go ahead, Rob.
People can see me. And I don't know if it's out of our lane or anything, but I was thinking today about Senate Bill 5139. Was that what you were discussing, limiting rent increases for 6 months?
That's not what I was discussing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wondered if that was on your radar. Senator Wilson's there, Senator Das, but it looks like it's stuck in the Senate committee. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, it's part of the information we sent you, and I don't expect it to. It is stuck in committee right now. I don't expect it to pass. We, as a county, we haven't put in. I think we've been silent on it. I don't think the county would affirmatively support it. Just because there's also a lot of interest in terms of landlord rights, that touch on that.
Okay, thanks.
It is one of the top priority bills for housing advocates. And I think it is, right now there's an amendment that was offered, and there's a senator who offered the amendment that's not quite sure if it's still good enough to make it move forward. But that is a bill that it has been tracked. And that landlords are fighting. I think there was actually an ad put out in the Columbian today.
There was a huge one in the Columbian today. It's what drew my attention today. But I think of my kids in apartments and the struggle they had paying rent last year.
But so going away, we'll move away from legislative update in a moment. But that's actually a very good example where, as a board, as private citizens that are in an advisory board of advocacy around areas of poverty, you can, especially in your, within the advocacy committees, the CAAB can advocate for bills and not be forced to take the same position the county necessarily will. So like as staff, we can provide you some of the information on, all the bills and where you're at in committees and stuff like that, like, just like you received today. And as individuals, you can do, obviously, any specific advocacy you want to do based on what you think should be happening. But as a board, you could adopt some positions and forward like the CAAB's position on these bills to the county, and we would funnel it to Lindsay Schaefer, who is the policy advisor, and then it's up to the county whether they support or want to include that in the work with the county lobbyist or make it a county priority or not. But that is one thing that you can do as a board, let your voice be known to the county in terms of specific bills, and we will absolutely forward those positions to the policy advisor.
And I'll piggyback on that. It is right now with COVID, I think one of the very small shimmers of hope and positiveness is that the accessibility to the legislature is actually easier for people who do not live in Olympia. To sign on to a bill that's in a hearing takes 30 seconds to show your support. And they read the number of people that are in support of the bill after the hearing closes. So all of those legislators can hear how much support it has or how much opposition. So taking the time to sign in makes a difference. And also you can look to see who's on the committee that's hearing those bills and look for our representatives or senators that are either in the 49th, 18th, or 17th legislative districts, which are our districts in Clark County, and just shoot their legislative assistant an email. Super quick, just say, I support this and here's why. They like to hear from us, and that makes a difference too. So I think this year will be a really good focus on legislation. There are more bills around housing and homelessness than I've seen in years. I mean, it's really a focus, and now's the time where our voices can make such a big difference. So thank you for that update, Michael. Appreciate it. Thank you for that question, Rob. Anything else before we transition? Hearing none. looks like we've got a funding update, and our meeting ends at 4 o'clock today. So we have 34 minutes for the remainder of our agenda, which I think is sufficient time. All right,
Sorry.
go ahead.
It's like, oh yeah, I have to unmute myself. So at previous meetings, the advisory board had asked to get a better comprehensive look at all of the funding that we have been dealing with in that touches on the homeless crisis response system and community action programs. So I've gone through and trying to put this report together. Now, please remember, you're going to get the PowerPoint after the meeting. You'll be able to comb through this a little bit more. But I wanted to kind of give you an overview of all of the things that we've been working on. So each of the first several slides, what you'll see is the name of the program, so our community action programs, and how much is allocated to us for an annual allocation, and then a brief description of what that is. So under our community action umbrella, we have our community services block grant funds, both state and federal, and we have local human services funds that we put into the pot to fund the programs. And then this is an annual allocation with a fiscal year that ends. So this year it'll end 6/30 of 2021. So these are the programs that were awarded funding during the last request for application round. So 211 Info, Clark College, the Clark County Food Bank, the Clark County Volunteer Lawyers Program, Partners in Careers, and Share with their Hunger Response Program, and the amounts that they received. So all of the tables are going to be in the same format, except with our homeless crisis response system, because we have so many programs, they broke them down into different housing intervention types. So our homeless crisis response system, we received a little over $6.7 million. This is our normal funding that we receive. It's emergency housing assistance. There's a blend of funding that goes under this pot. So we have marriage license fees. We have local and state document recording fees, which are our, I'm not sure why I put local and state document recording fees. So our local document recording fees, and then the portion that goes back to the state and then comes back to us as part of the consolidated homeless grant. And we also include in that fund the housing and essential needs program. This is also an annual allocation with the fiscal ending June 30th. So under our data collection, planning, and core support programs, we have Council for the Homeless doing our community planning work, HMIS administration, the Housing Solutions Center. We also included CMAR with the SOAR program, which is the SSI, SSDI Outreach, Access, and Recovery program, and the Path to Outreach program, along with Share's Rentwell programs, and the amounts that they have been allocated with funding. With prevention rent assistance, we have the Council for the Homeless with their prevention through diversion and the Janus Youth Bridges program. This is their normal annual contract amount, but they did receive CARES Act funding, but that's in a different slide. And then we fund permanent supportive housing programs with Impact Northwest, with Lifeline, with Share through specifically for case management at Lincoln Place. It doesn't pay the rent, it pays the case management. And then Share has a scattered site permanent supportive housing program that's funded. Under rapid rehousing intervention types, we have Impacts Northwest with their rapid rehousing, Share's housing and essential needs program. There's also new funding this year that we received that's a pilot program for the housing and essential needs program, along with Share had received funding for their rapid rehousing program. We only have one program that's funded under the transitional housing program, and that is Second Step with their self-sufficiency program. And then under shelter, we have several different programs that are funded. We have the motel voucher program through Council for the Homeless. Janus Youth has their own motel voucher program that's specific to youth and being housed once they are entering a program but are not into housing yet. Their Oak Bridge Youth Shelter program, see that it's spelled right, it's not Bridget. And then the Perch Day Center for Janus Youth. Share, we fund in one kind of large contract, the emergency shelter system, but that includes several shelters: Orchards Inn, Homestead, Share House, the Who, Winter Hospitality, Overflow Shelters, the severe weather shelter components. So there's a lot in that. And then they receive a separate allotment for their women's emergency shelter, which is their WHAT program. And then YWCA for the Safe Choice Domestic Violence program. So some other, what we would kind of put in the regular funding that we received is brand new this last year. It is a shelter capacity grant. It's funded by the Washington Department of Commerce, and its specific intention is to increase shelter capacity in Clark County. This was an initiative that was started before the pandemic began. And so that we could, we know that we have lack of shelters across the state, and Commerce recognized that. So they had put these funds aside already. The idea is that you increase the shelter capacity in your community, and that could be by, renovating and increasing beds in existing facilities, or by what the county is looking at doing in partnership with the City of Vancouver and the Vancouver Housing Authority, is purchasing a hotel and converting it into a shelter. These funds will pay for operations of that for 3 years, and the request for applications for the shelter operator closed last Friday, and the applications are now under review. So now all the rest of these tables are going to be new funds that came in that are somehow COVID related. First, there's the CARES Act Relief Funds, or CRF, which is the funding that the county received through the Washington Department of Commerce. And there are also some Clark County general funds that were included in this batch of funds. And it was used to establish the quarantine and isolation facility. And we also supported some other homeless crisis response system programs, such as shelter, motel vouchers, prevention, rent assistance, things like that. These funds had to be spent, originally had to be spent out in December, but then with the update to the CARES Act, they allowed it to go to June 30th. So these funds have to be spent out by June 30th. However, almost all of our stuff was spent out in October to meet the original deadline. And then there was a change to public health taking over the operations of the quarantine and isolation shelter, where they are kind of wrapping everything up under that. And so you can see here, there was about $1.8 million that was put into the quarantine and isolation shelter through the Department of Community Services, and then $1.2 million into a myriad of homeless crisis response system programs.
Is there still an outstanding 400,000 in that fund that hasn't been allocated?
So the other thing that I did not mention, and I apologize, I should have at the very beginning, was these funds and what you'll see in the table do not include any staffing time, operations costs, indirects, or anything like that. So those are above and beyond. What's in the table is just what was allocated into programs in the community.
So Rebecca, to answer your question, no, there isn't any funding that has not been allocated or spent.
So hopefully most of the board members will remember that way back when the pandemic first started, we got an allocation of community service block grant COVID funds. So that's what these funds are, the CARES Act funds there. We were allocated $543,000. We did a quick RFA-ish type process, application process. We can spend these funds through September 2022. So some programs are spending it now and moving forward. Some of them are, kind of pulling the funds throughout the entire time frame, and that's totally fine. That's whatever meets the needs of their agency. And so you'll see these are all the same programs that we funded in our normal community action allocation RFA, and the additional amounts that they received that are CARES Act specific. One of the programs we've talked about briefly in the past is the Eviction Rent Assistance Program. Clark County ended up receiving a total of just shy of $8.5 million that had to be spent originally by the end of December. Again, when the CARES Act got extended through to June 30th, we now have that option However, almost all of our programs had already spent out or had almost all spent out, and to the fact where I think we only have a few $1,000s that have not been provided into the community. I broke this down into two components, the rent assistance providers, which were Council for the Homeless, Impact Northwest, Lifeline, and Share. And then, as Michael had mentioned, we had our buy-in for programs that did outreach and engagement. So you can see all of the agencies that received this funds and what allocations they had. One caveat I will put there is that the agencies were able to request the amount of funds that they thought they could administer. And then when we got towards the end of what we thought was going to be the end of the program in December, we reallocated funds that they hadn't spent and put them into the rent assistance so that they would get spent when we closed the wait list for the program, because we knew there was significant demand and not enough funding to go to all of those programs. Another allotment of CARES Act funds was through the Emergency Solutions Grant. We received just shy of $5 million in that in two different allocations. Some of the funds have already been allocated out from the first allocation. We've worked with programs to put them out into the community. And then the bulk of what you don't see in this table is actually going to be in a request for application, which we had briefly spoke about having a review committee, and we'll talk about more in a moment. These also can be spent through September 2022, so we do have a little bit of time, and because there's been a huge focus on the eviction rent assistance program and more new prevention assistance programs, this one we've been working on a little bit slower than what we typically would do. So that leads me into the new prevention assistance program. The Treasury, in the last stimulus package that was approved by Congress in December, they allocated $25 billion in rent assistance. Jurisdictions that had over 200,000 people could apply directly to the Treasury, which the Clark County did apply directly to. And we received a direct allocation of $14.7 million to be used for prevention rent assistance. This has to be spent by the end of this year, which is why this one is taking a little bit more priority over the ESG funds, which we have more time to spend. We are currently working with nonprofits to determine who we can partner with to get the funds out, because that is a significant amount of funds, and how the program is going to be designed. However, we are still waiting for the Treasury to provide actual guidance on how we can use the funds before we can actually design a program to implement it here in Clark County. So it makes it a little bit of a struggle to get the program moving quickly, but we are keeping our eye out every day for that guidance and information for that. But this is a significant amount of funds that will be coming hopefully in the next few weeks to the community. Okay, so those are like just kind of the overviews of all the funding pots. And then I thought it would be kind of fun to do some funding comparisons in these charts for you. So this chart talks about the funds, what we get regularly, which is 10 million-ish, and what we have gotten that is COVID specific, which is 3 times the amount, or $32 million. So you can see that is quite the difference of what the staff, which is for these funds, primarily Michael, myself, and Beth, what we've been working on over the last few months. And then this just kind of breaks it. I broke it down into the different types of categories of funding that we've done in the past. So our community action programs, the homeless crisis response system, those are kind of there just in their big pots of funds. And then you can see, so there's the shelter capacity grant of $2.5 million, the CARES Act, $3.4 million. So you can see all of those pots of funds, what the overall amount looks like and all the different types of funding that we received. And then this actually is the one that breaks it down into the different types of services that we provide out into the community. So you'll see there's the data collection and planning, which is about 2% of our funding, core support programs, which is the Housing Solutions Center, Rent Well, the SOAR program. And then the different types of rent assistance, prevention, permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, transitional housing, shelter services, and then community action. So this is with our regular funding, right? That first 2 slides or 3 slides that I talked about. This is what it looks like when we look at all of the funding that is COVID specific. So you can see now 86% of the funds are going into prevention, where there was in the previous slide, you can see 46% was shelter and 32% was in rapid rehousing to priority areas. That's very different. Rapid rehousing is only 1% of the funding now, and shelter services 9%, and the majority of it. And that is because of the ERAP, the 9 million in ERAP and the 14 million in TRAP, which is what people are calling the new treasury.
Rebecca, let me just very, very quickly, the reason for that shift, I just want to make it very clear, that's not a choice that we're making as staff or that the county is making at all. The treasury funds and the state funds by legislation, they are to be used for rent assistance and of people that are already housed that are owing back rent. So that's the intent of these funds as they've come down to us, just as you know, for your information.
And those are primarily accessed through those smaller organizations you listed and the Housing Resource Center and SHARE?
So the ERAP program had 2 different access points, which was SHARE and the Housing Solutions Center. The treasury dollars, that 14.7 million, we haven't completely designed it, but we're trying to figure out an online portal along with the Housing Solutions Center. But
So
that's still there.
If somebody needs rent assistance, do they have to phone the Housing Solutions Center where they may get referred to SHARE, or is SHARE taking direct applications?
For the treasury dollars, it's unknown at this time.
For the other dollars, the ones that have been operating?
The wait list has been closed for since November for those funds because of the significant demand.
For the rent assistance?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And
so,
ERAP, I'm sorry I missed it. ERAP stands exactly for what?
Eviction Rent Assistance Program.
Eviction. Couldn't think what the E was for. Okay.
I have a question. This is kind of a pretty high level question, pretty much an overview, and I know it's only best guess, but I'm just thinking, you know, with that influx of $22 million more to help with rental assistance, although you've just now said that's closed for a lot of people, do you have a sense that most of our people have gotten enough assistance that they're in fairly good shape coming out of COVID?
No, I can speak that. Like, we have a very good sense that no, this assistance is not even close to what is needed. The state has estimated that about 12% of people are not able to pay their rent right now. That it would take about $150 million per month statewide to pay back rent that is owed. And
no,
so
that's amazing.
So to give you an idea, with the $8-something million of the eviction rent assistance program from the state, that served about just over 1,700 households, and it paid for about 5 months of rent. It does not even come close to what the community needs. And with this $14.7 million, of which 90% of the treasury funds, of which 90% has to go out in direct financial assistance, our estimate is that 2,200 households will be served. So we believe that there are more than 15,000 households in Clark County that will need some assistance. And in each of these cases, the assistance that we're providing is fairly limited. In the case of ERAP, it could be 3 months of 3 months of arrears. In the case of the treasury funds, it's going to be up to 12 months of arrears. But at this point, a lot of households have a lot more than that already in arrears. So just to be very, very clear, this is an incredibly important and a relatively large influx of funds for the community, to the point that our service providers' capacity to get this funding out in such a short period of time is hard, and it's completely insufficient to meet the need.
Thank you, because, you know, when you hear big numbers like 22 million, you have hope that it's made a dent, but thank you for that explanation. It helps.
Yeah.
I can tell you from personal experience, attempting to help people get this funding, I've worked with, I mean, dozens and dozens of clients who are back due far more than the 3 months that they were allowed to have back in the fall. So this coming up funding is going to be hugely helpful for a lot of people, but just as he was saying, there are so many people who lost their jobs in March of last year and have never regained them. So,
And the
How
nice
much of the need remains unmet?
Well, I think that about 1 in 10 households are getting assistance, and I know we're at it's 346 right now. We will have to move forward and wrap up. But just to be clear, a lot of people, as Jamie said, are not getting assistance, and that's I'll put on the service providers a lot. Like I've called 3 times or 10 times, or I'm on a wait list, and I may or may not get assistance, and that is all absolutely true. And it's also true that the fact that the service providers in this community got $8 million of rent assistance out between late August and December is heroic. And, really, it's a debt of gratitude that we owe them, because it's been a lot of work to make that
It's been
happen.
amazing, the amount of time that the agencies have been able to put out and get this going. So there a lot of kudos go to those 4 housing programs that work with us with ERAP, but we're trying to make additional partnerships for the additional funds. And then this is just a different way of looking at the funding comparison by service type. You'll see there's both the regular funds and then the COVID funds in the different types of things. I just wanted to give, for those of you that like different ways of looking at data, an idea of what that looks like, especially with the rent assistance. You can see very little before with the regular funding, and then a significant increase. That is the last of the funding.
That's good.
And Rebecca will be sending this out to each of us, so you have the opportunity to pore over it and follow up with questions via email. But is there any burning questions to wrap up this portion of our agenda?
I just want to say you've achieved your goal in setting out the big picture in a very clear way. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you for that comment, Bridget. Okay, so next up on the agenda, as we round out our meeting, an ESGCV review committee. Okay, so you want to just give us a quick overview of this, Rebecca?
Yeah, so hopefully you'll remember, and Rob, this would be new to you, but a couple of months ago, I sent out an email saying, hey, we've got these funds, we want to do an RFA. We were hoping to do it really quickly and get it going very quickly to get a small subcommittee of the Community Action Advisory Board to look at the applications that we're going to have received in 2 different areas: coordinated homeless outreach provider and rapid rehousing program service providers. This has been delayed because of all of the other funding that has been received that has tighter deadlines, but we do plan on doing the request for application. I did get emails from 3 or 4 different CAAB members that were interested in participating in that board. Or in that subcommittee, what I do is once I get closer and have a better idea of the timeline for the request for application, I will resend it out, re-engage, and then we will get a subcommittee of about 5 board members to help with the review.
Thank you for closing the loop on that. I know that there was some interest and then we didn't hear anything, so it's nice to know that this is still in the works. Okay, so we can all keep our eyes open for that email. And now we have our task force updates. And I don't know if task force have been meeting. I know I haven't participated in any.
So the advocacy task force had been put on hold. Beth has been the one staffing the advocacy task force, and with the quarantine and isolation shelter and the ESG funds and everything else that's been going on, it's just kind of gone away. Hopefully lately you've been seeing emails from me regularly, just giving you the FYIs about the different bills and how to advocate, and I will continue to keep doing that as much as I possibly can. And it is the goal that the advocacy task force will start reconvening once we have a little bit more stability in staff capacity. But the CNA task force has been moving forward because we have an absolute drop dead deadline for getting the community needs assessment fully adopted. We did community forums in the beginning of February or beginning of December, and we received satisfaction surveys back that they enjoyed the forum. We did not have as much participation as we were hoping for, but the feedback from the forums and the information gleaned from those forums was very informative, and we are now on to our next steps to give you guys an update. We have started working with, and some of you might know this name, Jackie St. Louis. He is working on, I have submitted all of the information that we have collected for the community needs assessment back from the survey to the community forums and to other assessments that we had been collecting. And he is going to start drafting the CNA, the wording for the CNA for us. And then we will provide that to the task force members in March at our March meeting, and they will do a review of that and provide any feedback for the changes that need to be done. And then we will get that the wording component of it all put together for the full Community Action Advisory Board to adopt at our May meeting. We will work really hard to try to get you more of a complete community needs assessment that is pretty like the one that we have that's been published, that has all the charts and all of that. I'm just not sure if that part is going to be feasible working with our communications department, but we will do our best to do that. But you will have the wording and a general idea of what that outline is going to look like to adopt at the May meeting. Once it's formally adopted and we have a very beautiful put together report, then we will make sure that we do the marketing for the full needs assessment, which includes, as basic as putting it on our website, sending it to board members, sending it to our stakeholders list, which has like 250 people, sending it to people that had said that they'd be interested in seeing the full needs assessment during the entire processes that we've been doing for this, along with news releases. And then we will get some of them printed and send them, especially to elected officials, so that they have those in their hot little hands to see what their stakeholders are saying, their needs in our community. I think that's the quickest overview.
That was quite amazing.
Agreed, I agree. Okay, well, it's good to see Jackie's name up there. He's very talented. Any questions about the community needs assessment?
The only thing that I wanted to add really quickly is when we did talk at the last meeting, one of the things I had noticed and we discussed is that there was a lack of any elected officials that had attended those forums. So it would be really nice the next time there's a go around that we have a real big push to have more elected officials so that they understand and hear people's voices at those meetings.
That was the only, I think, real negative comments were that people wanted to see more participation and more participation from elected officials.
The other thing I'd add when we're thinking of elected officials is that it would be really neat to almost raise the profile of the work that CAAB and Community Services does with council, that it would be neat once we have this published document for the board to also present it to council, maybe in September or so after it's been out, or even July.
Yeah, we did that.
I think that's an opportunity. I know Michael sometimes presents it. I think it'd be good if, the board was there too this time.
Yeah, we did. I mentioned, I think of it as like I went on tour with the completed needs assessment, and I went to tons of elected official, work sessions and council meetings, and we did a presentation for the county council, and I'm happy to do that all again. I went out to, I tried to revisit all of the community meetings that I had gone to with the survey and the forum requests. So it looks a little different now, but I do want to make sure that the word about the completed needs assessment does get out.
Well, and my point is that the Community Action Advisory Board should be involved in that, especially with council, because I think they kind of forget what we do. It would be good.
Good point. And noted, I think an invite to that work session would be great for us to attend and show unity.
Yeah.
Very good. I think the last item on the agenda is an open forum. I'm not sure if we have any public visiting us today virtually, so I'll go ahead and do a call and open the floor. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to comment, this is your opportunity. If there's anyone from the public who would like to comment, now is the time. Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the open forum. Other business, we do have a new CAAB resource website. I don't know if you wanted to click the hyperlink and just give a quick preview for the last couple minutes here.
Yes, so we are working to do things as remotely and virtually as we possibly can. So Janet had actually helped me put together a CAAB member resource page. I will send the link out to you. It has everything in here that would come in your binder that we have. So the checklist that I went over, if you'll remember, initialing all the different documents, the presentation, and then a lot of those documents that are in there are all now posted on the website, or are links to where they're actually posted in the great web that we have. And so you have easy access to all of these documents now. Rob, when we do your orientation, this is the link I'll have you go to, and we'll just kind of work our way through all of the documents, and you'll get to hear all about them. It's really fascinating, I gotta tell you.
So Rebecca, with that link, if you go to the county webpage, sorry, this is an obsession I have. Go to the county webpage and go to the search line and type in CAAB. Will that come up?
You know, and for some reason I'm in the edit mode. So it is showing like the different things that are in that same page.
Okay, so long as it gets there. I couldn't get there that way before.
Yeah. So if you're going the hard way to get there, and you go to our community services page, you can go to, how do I get out of publishing mode? I don't know what.
Yeah, but not everybody knows.
You just have to log out over on the left-hand side. Yeah, just one more over. It looks, log out right there.
There we go.
You can see it.
Okay. So if you go to our department, which I have linked because it's my department, I use it. And you go to, on the left-hand side, to community action. And then there's several different, but the advisory board is here. And then this is where we've been posting the news release, which needs to be updated, and then the board. And it also has the table, and this will be updated. So I was trying to edit to try to figure out how to get it changed, but I haven't had training. So I didn't want to mess anything up on the website.
So my point is the overall menu, if somebody didn't know CAAB was below community services, could you make sure that can happen?
If you put in community action, it will put you this one right here.
Okay.
So the search functionality works perfect. Well, we have 1 minute remaining. So with that, keep your eyes open for the email updates that'll come out. And it looks like the strategic plan is now on the website, so we don't necessarily need that via email. It sounds like Amy may have asking for a hard copy of any documents that she signed. Just make sure you saw that in the chat. And other than that, is there any items for the good of the order for our last 30 seconds?
Yeah, I want to apologize for being late. I couldn't get my microphone to work. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. It happens to the best of us.
And okay. I just want to say, if you type in CAAB in the county search, you don't get to the home page of the advisory board. You get a list of documents about forms and things, Word documents instead.
Okay, I will work on that.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you for that feedback, and welcome to the board. Okay, everyone, our meeting is adjourned. 4 o'clock. Have a wonderful evening, and I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Back to the impeachment.
Yes. Be well, everyone.
Who scheduled this meeting while the impeachment was on?
You guys did, actually.
Yeah, we didn't know. Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Okay, Rob.
Rebecca, am I sticking with you?
Yes, but for some reason, it's not letting me stop recording there.